Beneath the great temple of Isis, where torchlight flickered against alabaster walls, 5 women knelt in a perfect circle. The scent of lotus and myrrh clung to the air, mingling with the whisper of silk as they moved. At the center of their circle lay a silver bowl filled with dark, rippling water, reflecting their faces like fractured moonlight. Neferet, the astronomer priestess, dipped her fingers into the bowl. The stars shift. The gods whisper. Her voice was like wind over the desert. The Romans will march soon. Zahra, the desert witch, smirked. Then we shall whisper louder. A single flame burned on the altar of the goddess, casting shadows across the chamber. To the world above, they were courtiers and handmaidens, entertainers and poets. But beneath the temple, they were something else entirely, the daughters of Isis, Cleopatra's unseen hand. They wielded magic not of spells alone but of secrets, seduction, and unseen power. And tonight, a decision must be made. Zahra had been a girl of the dunes before the queen's hand had plucked her from obscurity. Her mother had whispered ancient words into the wind, spoken to sandstorms as though they were living things. And Zahra had inherited more than beauty, she had inherited power. In Alexandria, she was known as the Pearl of the Nile, a dancer whose every movement held men in thrall. When she swayed, generals forgot their conquests. When she whispered, kings changed their minds. And yet, tonight, she danced for only one man. Lucius Varro watched her with a soldier's discipline, his dark Roman eyes betraying nothing. But she knew. She saw the way his fingers clenched against the stone railing, how his breath hitched when her bare feet slid across the marble. I wonder, she murmured as the last note of the lyre faded, does Rome teach its men to be blind to beauty? Lucius tilted his head, his bronze armor catching the firelight. Rome teaches men to see through deception. A slow smile curved her lips. Then perhaps you should be wary, Commander. His jaw tightened. He had been sent to spy on her, to gauge her loyalty to Cleopatra. But instead, he had become tangled in her. In the scent of her skin, in the way her laughter curled around him like unseen chains. She stepped closer, her fingers ghosting over the hilt of his sword. Do you truly wish to serve Octavian, Lucius? She whispered. Or do you wish to serve something greater? The air between them crackled. But before he could answer, a shadow moved beyond the columns. Meri, the queen's handmaiden, ever watchful, ever waiting. Meri was a ghost. She moved through Cleopatra's palace unseen, a whisper in silk, a shadow in torchlight. She knew every secret that passed through these halls, the forbidden lovers, the whispered betrayals, the silent deals. She had seen Lucius and Zahra before. And she had let it continue. But tonight, the sands were shifting. She approached them as if emerging from darkness itself. Zahra, she said, her voice cool. The queen requests your presence. A flicker of warning passed between them. Zahra turned back to Lucius, her fingers trailing over his wrist. We will speak again, she promised. Lucius watched her go, his face unreadable. But Meri saw the way his hand lingered on the place she had touched. Rome was already losing its hold on him. Good. Because soon, he would have to choose. High above Alexandria, in the queen's private chamber, Neferet traced the positions of the stars with an ink-stained finger. Cleopatra sat beside her, wrapped in a robe of deep crimson, her dark eyes sharp as a hawk's. Tell me, she murmured. How much time do we have? Neferet exhaled. Not enough. The stars whispered of betrayal, of war, of endings, but also of beginnings. The queen's lips curved. Then we must make use of what time we have. Neferet hesitated. The daughters are restless. Zahra grows reckless. Meri watches. And Tahmineh has already set the pieces in motion, Cleopatra finished. Neferet glanced at her queen. Then you know? Cleopatra smiled, slow and knowing. Darling, I always know. The daughters of Isis met once more beneath the temple. This time, the air was thick with something unspoken. Meri crossed her arms. Lucius Varro is a danger. Zahra met her gaze, unflinching. or a weapon. Neferet placed a scroll upon the altar. Rome is coming. The queen knows it. The queen expects it. Zahra's fingers brushed the silver bowl of water, watching the ripples shift and change. So, she whispered, "How shall we rewrite fate?" The women looked at one another. And in that moment they knew. They would not wait for the world to decide their fate. They would shape it themselves. Deep within the temple, the scent of burning myrrh thickened the air. The daughters of Isis gathered once more, their eyes reflecting the flickering flames. Zahra stood tall, her fingers tracing the rim of the silver bowl. "Lucius Varro will not betray us." Meri scoffed. "You trust him because he shares your bed?" Zahra's lips curled. "I trust him because I have seen the doubt in his eyes. He is a man caught between two worlds." Neferet leaned forward, her gaze sharp. A man caught between two worlds is the most dangerous of all. Silence fell over them. Then, from the shadows, another voice. "Let him prove himself." The women turned as Cleopatra stepped into the chamber. Her golden headdress caught the light, her kohl-lined eyes betraying nothing. Meri lowered her head. "My queen." Cleopatra's gaze never wavered from Zahra. "If Lucius is truly yours, then let him act as a blade in our hands." Zahra nodded slowly. "And what would you have him do?" Cleopatra smiled, a predator's smile. "He will deliver a message." She turned to Neferet. "Prepare the ink." To Zahra. "Prepare your lover." To Meri. "Prepare for war." That night, under the moon's silver glow, Lucius Varro stood in Zahra's chamber, his hands clenched at his sides. "You ask me to betray Rome," he murmured. Zahra, draped in golden silk, stepped closer. "Rome has already betrayed you." He exhaled, looking past her, as if searching for an answer in the city beyond the balcony. "If I do this," he said, voice tight, "there is no turning back." Zahra reached up, cupping his face. "Then don't turn back," she whispered. "Step forward." Their lips met, but this was not a kiss of passion, it was a seal. A binding. A choice made in the dark. And when he left her chambers, the message of the daughters of Isis was inked onto his skin, written in a language only the initiated could read. A warning to Rome. A promise of war. Meri moved through the palace like a wraith. She needed no magic to vanish into shadows, she was one. She watched, waited, listened. She knew which guards were loyal, which servants whispered in Roman ears. She knew which senators had gold lining their pockets, and which only craved blood. And tonight, she followed a single man through the palace corridors. Gaius Cornelius, a Roman envoy. A snake disguised as a diplomat. He thought he moved unseen. He thought he was the hunter. But Meri? Meri was the blade in the dark. She reached him just as he entered the courtyard, pressing a dagger to his throat before he could cry out. "You carry Octavian's secrets," she whispered. "And now, you will carry ours." With a flick of her wrist, she pressed a vial into his palm. "Take this to your master." The envoy's hand shook as he took it. "What is it?" Meri smiled. "A promise." He fled into the night, leaving only the scent of fear behind. She turned back to the palace. The game had begun. Cleopatra stood before the great mirror of polished bronze, watching as her attendants wove golden threads into her hair. "You are quiet tonight," Neferet said from the shadows. Cleopatra met her gaze through the mirror. "Tonight, I am thinking of endings." Neferet stepped closer. "And beginnings." A slow smile touched the queen's lips. "And beginnings." She turned to face her most trusted oracle. "Tell me, Neferet, do the stars still favor me?" Neferet hesitated. "The stars do not choose, my queen. Only you do." Cleopatra studied her, then reached for a delicate vial resting on the table. "Then I shall make my own fate." Neferet frowned. "What is that?" Cleopatra's fingers curled around the vial. "A final gift for Rome." The queen's last lover had not yet been chosen. But when he came, he would drink from her cup. And with it, He would drink his doom. At dawn, the streets of Alexandria were filled with the sound of marching feet. Lucius Varro stood atop the city walls, watching as Roman ships darkened the horizon. His heart clenched. He had made his choice. Behind him, Zahra joined him, her golden eyes fierce. "It has begun," he murmured. Zahra's fingers laced with his. "Then let us finish it." Below them, in the heart of the city, Cleopatra stood in her royal robes, her crown gleaming beneath the morning sun. Beside her, Meri melted into the shadows. Neferet raised her arms to the sky. Zahra whispered words of power into the wind. The daughters of Isis were ready. The world would remember them. And Rome? Rome would never forget.